Fate Strange Fake anime is here. It's gorgeous and exciting. Some people may feel inclined to start their Fate journey here, even though it's meant to be a spin-off or subversion of existing Fate works. Whether you're a total noob to the franchise or a seasoned veteran, here are some things that are helpful to learn or remind yourself of going into the anime. Hi, I'm Daikun, and these are all the things you need to know about Fate Strange Fake. Like many Fate works, Strange Fake is based around the concept of a Holy Grail War, specifically a more complicated variant of one. The very first Grail War was actually started as a ritual by mages to obtain true magic, a special tier of Magecraft that, basically, performs miracles that defy the universe itself. You see, there's this thing called the Root, Akasha, or the Spiral of Radix. It's where everything in the universe comes from, and where it'll eventually return to. Whenever a mage finds a way to reach the Root and come back alive, they obtain one of a handful of true magics. Long ago, this one family, the Einsburns, possessed a true magic called Heaven's Feel, but then lost it. In order to get it back, they teamed up with two other mage families, the Tosakas and Makiri, to find another path to the Root. A Holy Grail War was their way of exploiting the planet's energy for their own needs. The Earth has its own will that seeks to protect itself from threats. One form of this protection is the Throne of Heroes, a timeless catalog of famous people throughout history who can be summoned as heroic spirits. These heroes were meant to be summoned against world-ending beasts and such, but mages created a system that would let them summon heroic spirits to do their bidding. These are what we call servants. For all it's cracked up to be, the Holy Grail War is nothing more than an excuse to summon a bunch of servants and use their magical energy to reach the Root. Fighting over the Holy Grail is just a carrot at the end of a string to get servants to participate. As they die, their mana gets absorbed into a vessel, and the Root can be reached when all 7 heroes in the war are collected. A huge oversight of the design was that, even if one servant were to win the war for their human master, they too would need to be sacrificed to completely fill the Grail. Considering servants heed the call in order to have a wish granted, they're not too keen on dying for the cause. As a result, none of the existing Grail Wars have ever actually reached the Root as intended. Instead, they've devolved into a brutal competition between mages and servants for the chance to use whatever mana does get collected in the Grail. It may not be enough to reach the Root, but all that mana still has plenty of uses. The most relevant Grail Wars are the 4th and 5th held in Fuyuki, Japan, which encompass Fate Zero and Fate Stay Night respectively. Strange Fake is a sequel to those, with a Grail War taking place in the US. Just when we thought the Holy Grail Wars would be done for good, we discover that some mages in America have been trying to make their own war using data from the previous wars. Their venue, Snowfield, Nevada, was built exclusively to host their ritual on sacred land. That said, these mages weren't able to properly recreate Fuyuki's wars. Theirs wound up being an imperfect copy. To compensate, they sought to create a second overlapping Grail War, completing the ritual. Thus, we have the first, fake Holy Grail War, which exists to facilitate the second, true one. The first batch of servants are essentially sacrifices to enrich Snowfield for the real deal. That fake war only features 6 servants, lacking the iconic Saber class. They are merely a means of sparking the true war, which features all 7. Regardless, the entire ordeal is a chaotic mess of 13 masters and servants, only a handful of which actually know what's going on. One reason the American mages couldn't produce a proper Grail War was because they lacked help from this guy, Zelretch. He's one of the only living mages who still has the power of a true magic. His magic, Kaleidoscope, grants him access to parallel universes. He can siphon mana from other worlds, like he did for the Einsburns back in the day, but otherwise chooses to sit back and watch various universes from a space between them. This Snowfield situation is one of many things he's got his eyes on. He mentions in passing the appearance of the Spider, which is an offhand reference to Ort, an alien sleeping in South America capable of wiping out the Earth. We see Zelretch talking to his buddy, Kabak Alcatraz, a mage who is trapped in a labyrinth of his own creation and can only communicate to the outside world via telephones. These guys are mostly cameos, but occasionally intervene in the wars as they see fit. Zelretch, in particular, is fascinated by Ayaka Sajyou, the de facto protagonist of Strange Fake. I've got a whole-ass video covering exactly who she is, but she's basically the spin-off of a spin-off from other works in the franchise. She's modeled off the original character design meant to star in Fate Stay Night, before Nasu decided to swap everyone's genders. By all means, though, this blonde Ayaka is a completely separate character in her own right, with an extremely complicated origin story. To avoid major spoilers and keep things short, she's essentially the true result behind an infamous ghost story native to Fuyuki. Said story deals with a reclusive woman living by herself in an apartment complex when her neighbors die from a double suicide. Ever since, the woman has been haunted by an ominous Little Red Riding Hood figure when trying to access the elevator. While Ayaka doesn't know much about herself, she too is haunted by that red figure and is terrified of elevators. Ayaka winds up in Snowfield after meeting a girl named Philia. The Einsburn family, responsible for the first 5 Grail Wars, pass on their legacy to artificial humans, or homunculi. Philia is one such homunculus who has, for some mysterious reason, gifted Ayaka command spells for the true Grail War in America. Command spells are what make a master in the Grail War, a set of 3 individual spells that can be used to forcibly compel a servant. While Ayaka isn't exactly a mage, Philia sets her up so that when a master is killed, she can essentially steal their servant. To an extent, Ayaka is being hypnotized by Philia and doesn't actually want to participate in the war. She's fed up with being treated as a pawn, but by the time she gains that resolve, she's already too deep into the battle. It appears Zelretch is also partially responsible for Ayaka's involvement in the war. Shortly after arriving in Snowfield, Ayaka was kidnapped by this guy named Kashura. He's one of the American mages set to participate in the true war. He was supposed to summon a Saber servant, presumably King Arthur, and was going to use Ayaka to see if his servant would sacrifice a helpless human. Instead, during his summoning ritual, he gets killed by the Fake War's assassin. Because of this, Ayaka reluctantly wound up forming a pact with his summoned hero. Instead of King Arthur, her Saber winds up being Richard the Lionheart, someone who's basically a King Arthur simp. Even though Ayaka doesn't want to fight, Richard still wants to protect her, and finds her more than worthy of being his master. The American organization in charge of these wars is manipulating things from the shadows. Their public-facing member is Faldius Dioland, who both starts the wars and participates as the Master of True Assassin. At first, Faldius studied under a mage called Langal from the Clock Tower in London. The Mages Association, the central governing force behind the use of Magecraft, found Snowfield suspicious. Langal was sent to America to see if there was foul play at work, having no idea that his own apprentice was in on the whole operation. Thus, at a key moment, Faldius had Langal executed, announcing to the Clock Tower the existence of his secret organization. It's worth noting that Langal's not actually dead. Sure, his body was shot to shit, but his mind and soul were able to take refuge in a puppet body he made just for this type of incident. After learning of these Grail Wars, Langal consults one of the Clock Tower's lords, Elmalloy II. Longtime fans will know this guy as Waver Velvet, a master who participated in the 4th Grail War. Back then, Waver entered the war after stealing his teacher's summoning catalyst. Thanks to his servant, Alexander the Great, he survived that war and more or less took over the role of his dead teacher. Taking responsibility for what he did, Waver is now acting as a proxy lord for the Elmalloy family. He's personally not very good at Magecraft, but he's a hella good teacher. One of Waver's students is a young prodigy named Flat Escardos. He's an absolute genius, intuitively understanding complex spells. At the same time, he's a whimsical, naive kid who likes getting into trouble. Despite Waver's warnings, he ventures to Snowfield and winds up becoming a master. His servant is Jack the Ripper, the false berserker. It's a bit confusing, really. Some may recognize Jack as a scantily clad loli who manifested from aborted children in the Whitechapel district of London. While she's considered the real Jack the Ripper, she doesn't change the fact that society never identified the actual culprit. Thus, the false Jack is a formless servant that embodies all the fear and skepticism of who Jack could be. There were so many theories without proof that this Jack can shapeshift into practically anyone. At first, Jack thinks Flat is naive and inept, but quickly learns that, contrary to his behavior, Flat is an exceptional mage. Orlando Reev is Snowfield's chief of police, which seems kinda screwed up when you realize that Snowfield was designed to host these wars. Police are supposed to protect the populace, yet here he is participating in a war that can and will result in civilian casualties. For example, the Fourth Grail War ended in a massive fire that wiped out a good chunk of Fuyuki's residents. Regardless, Orlando works closely with Faldius and winds up being the master of false caster. This guy's identity is Alexandre Dumas, the famous French novelist who wrote The Count of Monte Cristo. As an author, he's not fit for direct combat, but his power comes from rewriting various legends. Servants carry with them the legendary weapons they wielded in life. These are called noble phantasms, and are essentially a servant's special attack or technique. Through his writing, Dumas can strengthen existing noble phantasms. This is used to arm Orlando's police force, the Clan Calatin, named after the Irish warriors who fought Cuchulainn in the Ulster cycle. These mage police officers are each given their own upgraded weapons from Dumas' writing. At first, Orlando underestimates his own servant, only to realize how insanely resourceful Dumas is with a simple connection to the internet. Without being told anything, the reclusive caster has figured out the conspiracy of these Grail Wars, and Orlando's involvement with their formation. Arguably their biggest secret is an alliance with Francesca Prelati, a twisted little girl who treats these wars as her own personal entertainment. Nobody would suspect it just looking at her, but her true identity is Francois Prelati. Remember Gilles de Rais from Fate Zero? That psychopath used Lovecraftian beasts and demonic spells to torment children. Turns out, he learned everything he knew from his buddy Francois. The thing to note here is that Francesca isn't a heroic spirit. Rather, the original Francois used his Magecraft to reincarnate every time he died. This female body just so happens to be her current vessel. During World War II, Faldius' organization commissioned her to help form their own Grail Wars, causing her to be obsessed with the ones from Fuyuki, especially Artoria Pendragon from the 4th and 5th Wars. While she tried to interfere in those wars, various factors kept her at bay. Now, she's a participant in these new wars as the Master of True Caster, who, ironically, is the version of Francois Prelati recorded in the Throne of Heroes after his first death. There's a version of him that went down in history, and she's the still living thing who summons herself as a servant. The area Snowfield was built upon used to belong to an indigenous people known as the Protectors of the Land. When Magi came in search of ripe magical ley lines, these people were driven out of their homes to make room for construction. In one of the caves surrounding Snowfield, an arrogant mage tried his hand at summoning a servant and wound up pulling Gilgamesh as the war's false archer. If you've never met this guy, well, Gilgamesh is a big deal. He was a Mesopotamian demigod meant to obey the command of his gods. Instead, he grew arrogant and defiant, leading the gods to try and punish him. He ruled over the people of Uruk like a tyrant, amassing a huge collection of weapons in his Gate of Babylon. As a servant, he can call upon these treasures at will, firing them off like bullets. During life, Gilgamesh considered all of the world's treasures his, even if he had yet to claim them. To that end, he feels the Holy Grail also belongs to him by default, and anyone coveting it is a lowly thief. It should go without saying that he doesn't get along well with those who question his authority. He was summoned to the Fourth Grail War and wound up betraying his own master, opting to join with someone who had more worldly desires. When you summon Gilgamesh as a servant, you are expected to obey him, not the other way around. The guy who summons him to this false war doesn't get the memo, so Gilgamesh lops his arm off. Tine Chelk, one of the protectors of the land, then takes over as Gilgamesh's master. She's very pious to the king of Uruk, earning his approval. He can respect her desire to reclaim the spiritual land stolen from her people. However, the one thing ensuring he participates this time is the appearance of his best friend and lover, Enkidu. See, when the Mesopotamian gods wanted to punish Gilgamesh, they created Enkidu, a sentient glob of divine mud that eventually took the form of a genderless beauty. Enkidu was meant to be the chains of heaven that would bind Gilgamesh and force him to obey the gods. Instead, the two of them forged an irreplaceable bond. They loved to fight one another, but eventually combined their forces against the goddess Ishtar, incurring her wrath. After humiliating Ishtar, she complained to her father, and the gods then decided to punish Gilgamesh by killing Enkidu. This wound up hurting the king more than anything else could. Meeting his companion again during this Grail War becomes a dream come true, and the two celebrate their reunion with a massive brawl that leaves a huge crater in the desert. Gilgamesh's ultimate weapon, Aya, can unleash the power of Enuma Elish, a blast so strong it tears apart the fabric of reality. The thing is, he only uses it on opponents he deems worthy. His downfall in previous wars can be attributed to his hubris. Enkidu's summoning was another mess. One of the mages hoping to participate in the war was skilled in the creation of chimeras, beings made from combining various creatures into one. He made this silver wolf chimera to use as a catalyst in summoning his servant. In other words, the wolf would be sacrificed in order to try and pull a more powerful servant. However, in a bizarre twist, the wolf wound up being bestowed command spells instead of him. Usually, the people in charge of forming the Grail War are given priority to participate, with the other vacant slots going to other mages at the Grail's behest. Since the Grail automatically gives out these spells, there's no guarantee you'll be chosen as a master. Angry that his dog took what he wanted, this mage tried to kill the chimera, and in a desperate plea to live, the pupper summoned Enkidu as the false lancer. Overall, Enkidu is here to protect their master, but will still confront Gilgamesh as an old friend. Tsubaki Kuruoka is a little girl with really shitty parents. Having stolen bits of Fuyuki's Grail and studying the techniques of the Mato family, Tsubaki's parents used her as an experiment. She was infected with magically enhanced bacteria, which was supposed to make her a better mage, but instead completely robbed her of consciousness. Mr. and Mrs. Kuruoka never cared for their daughter as a person anyway, and keep her hospitalized in a coma solely so they can have her birth their next heir. They wanted to participate in this Grail War, but Tsubaki wound up getting command spells instead. The comatose child lives in her own dream world, where she summoned False Rider, the literal Pale Rider, from the Book of Revelation. Tsubaki's servant then altered the personalities of her parents, effectively making them dolls based on her imagination of them. While Tsubaki participates in the wars, she does so from her dreamscape and isn't usually aware of what's happening outside. Instead, she interacts vicariously, like getting scared from Gilgamesh's fight with Enkidu, enough to send Pale Rider to stop them. Originally, her parents were planning to summon Qin Shi Huang, the famous Chinese emperor. Jester Karture is someone we call a dead apostle, a vampire who remains immortal so long as he sates his bloodlust. The most powerful dead apostles manifest their own unique skills, and in Jester's case, it's the ability to alter his physical appearance. In truth, he used to be a little girl named Dorothea, but has since transformed many times over. Jester finds the world boring, and thinks it would be a great idea to awaken Ort, the spider alien I mentioned earlier. He gets sidetracked by the idea of participating in these wars, and summons the false assassin, a servant who immediately murders him the moment she arrives. In most Holy Grail Wars, the assassin class is reserved for members of the Hashashin, an order of assassins originating in Persia. Following in the footsteps of their original leader, Hassan-i Saba, each new leader of the sect took on the name Hassan and developed their own special ability, or Zabaniya. Historically, there were 19 different Hassans, but you can consider False Assassin the wannabe 20th candidate. She disavowed her own name, so it's easiest to refer to her as Beautiful Assassin. Inspired by the Hashashin, she did everything she could to prove herself worthy of inheriting the title. Unfortunately, she was considered too devoted to the cause, to the point where the sect treated her as a zealot. Thus, the 19th and final Hassan wound up being someone else. Undeterred by this, she went on to master the Zabaniyas of all previous Hassans. She never had an original technique of her own, but having 18 others under her belt was a massive achievement. Unlike the prior Hassans, Beautiful Assassin deems the Holy Grail a proof of heresy, an insult to her faith, only wanting to participate in the war so she can dismantle it altogether. Thus, the moment Jester summons her, she slaughters him and his vampire underlings. She then goes on to kill Kashura, the mage who kidnapped Ayaka. Her murder streak hits a speed bump when discovering that Jester isn't actually dead and has merely reshaped his body. Against her will, she becomes Jester's plaything. He seeks to torment and defile her until she forsakes her faith in despair. What a dick. Don't forget that Faldius, the guy running this operation, doubles as the master of True Assassin, who happens to be yet another mysterious Hassan. This guy, Hassan of the Fathomless Rift, isn't one of the numbered Hassans, but rather a shadowy figure who fought his way to the mausoleum of Azrael, where the first Hassan resided. His ominous presence is enough to make Faldius fear him despite their contract. Initially, Faldius thought his summoning failed, but that's only because True Assassin is that good at hiding in the dark. They only work together so long as Faldius shows that he has enough faith in something that he's willing to kill for it. If not, there's a good chance True Assassin would have killed him. In the past, Holy Grail Wars were conducted under supervision from the Holy Church. In Fate, the Church is obsessed with slaying heretics and unholy abominations. They have an entire force of executors meant to hunt down dead apostles like Jester. Hansa Cervantes is sent to Snowfield as the unofficial overseer of these wars. He was once orphaned in Spain when a dead apostle wiped out his entire village. He is now the adopted son of Del Mio Cervantes, a church priest who tries to keep Hansa on the straight and narrow. Overseers are supposed to help mediate the conflict and ensure members of the public aren't caught in the crossfire. Hansa, however, is willing to interfere in the wars if it means slaying its dead apostle participant. In that endeavor, he has augmented his body with a cybernetic right arm, and beneath his eye patch is what mages refer to as a mystic eye. The most iconic of these eyes would probably be the mystic eyes of petrification used by Medusa to turn her enemies to stone. Hansa's eye happens to be an artificial one made from crystal. He visits Snowfield alongside the quartet, 4 of his beautiful female subordinates. While they respect and obey his superior skills as an executor, they also chide him for his improper behavior as a member of the church. The girls help Hansa in keeping the wars secret from the people of Snowfield. After all, it's very important that mages conceal their craft from civilians, as their spells tend to derive power from secrecy. Basdelat Cordelian is part of an American mafia that works with mages to maintain power and influence. Both Francesca and his boss, the wealthy Galvaroso Scladio, chose him to enter the war as the master of true archer. They want him because he's such a notorious killer that they think he can withstand the Grail's corrupt mud. That's right, the main reason the Grail Wars were abandoned in Fuyuki was because the entire ritual got corrupted during its 3rd iteration. Back then, the Ainsburns tampered with the rules to summon an Avenger-class servant known as Angra Mainyu, all the world's evils from Zoroastrian mythology. When Angra Mainyu was defeated and absorbed into the Grail, he permanently corrupted it, such that it would only grant wishes through death and destruction. Now that the Grail's corrupted, when it nears completion, it begins spewing dark mud that very few people can withstand. Basdelat is considered wicked enough to handle this mud. What he summons, then, is a corrupt version of Hercules, or Heracles from Greek legend. Heracles had already fought in the 5th War as a Berserker-class servant. Due to all his accomplishments in life, he also qualifies as an archer. Thus, Basdelat summoned Heracles as the true archer, and after being bathed in the Grail's mud, he was corrupted into what the Fate series calls an altar. It's basically what happens when a servant awakens to a darker side of themselves they otherwise suppress. For Heracles, he takes on the name Alcides, his human self deprived of divinity. Compared to his legendary counterpart, Alcides has been ordered to confront human nature and is willing to harm innocent people in his conquest. Now that he's so fundamentally different, he refuses the name Heracles, as his current self is an insult to such a legendary hero. In Fate Zero, we were introduced to a woman named Maya Hisao. She served as confidant to Kiritsugu Emiya, supporting him in the 4th Grail War using conventional weaponry. In the past, she was horrifically assaulted by soldiers who took the resulting child from her. That child grows up to be Sigma, a special forces agent who uses Magecraft. He was forced to fire weapons from the age of 5 and has endured various magical experiments. For the true war, he summons Lancer, or rather, a servant taking the place of the Lancer class. This is Watcher, some totally unknown whale creature that communicates through its various shadows. Strangely, Watcher expects its own master Sigma to ascend as the war's true Lancer. Fate Zero showed off another dead apostle named Odd Borzak, who specialized in the use of demonic bees incubating in his own body. His granddaughter, Haruri Borzak, is the last survivor of the family line and studies Magecraft at the Clock Tower in London. Despite this, she has a vendetta against the Mages Association and Magecraft itself. She joins up with Francesca Prelati and enters the True Grail War to strike back against the Association. Her accomplice in this endeavor is her servant Huwawa, the true Berserker. This demon beast is more famously known as Humbaba, a Mesopotamian figure created by merging the souls of nearly 3,000 human children. Supposedly, it was born to be a complete human being, but instead devolved into a screaming monster in the cedar forest. Both Gilgamesh and Enkidu confronted Humbaba during their travels. At its core is the innocent heart of a young girl, the only soul comprising Humbaba that retained its sanity. Haruri isn't the only girl from the Clock Tower participating in these wars. Doris Lucendra was personally invited by Francesca and accepted the offer in order to form a pact with a hero from the Age of Gods. This refers to the earliest years of human history, where mankind still worshipped divine beings on a massive scale. Magecraft was able to flourish back then much more than it does now. A connection to the Age of Gods is what Doris thinks she needs to strengthen her declining lineage. Before actually summoning her servant, however, she was challenged to a duel by Rin Tosaka, one of Waver Velvet's students and a survivor from the 5th Holy Grail War. Rin and Doris fought to see who was worthy of entering the wars in Snowfield, and after a heated confrontation, Rin claimed victory. To that end, Doris is only a master in name only, allowing Rin and the rest of the El Malloy classroom to collectively share her servant, True Rider. That's right, Waver wasn't just going to sit back and let Flat get himself killed. This chick might look like the iconic Saber Artoria, but they're actually totally different people. Nah, the True Rider is Hippolyta, child of the war god Ares and eldest sister of the Amazons. In legend, she ruled as the Queen of Themyscira, building a tribe of warrior women to protect her kingdom. Her life forever changed when Heracles came to her. She admired him as a powerful man, worthy of gifting her mighty offspring. Instead of just a booty call, though, the Greek hero sought her sash, the belt of Ares, for one of his 12 labors. After understanding the full context of the situation, Hippolyta was willing to offer her sash to forge a peaceful alliance with a foreign king. However, thanks to interference from the goddess Hera, Hippolyta and Heracles misunderstood each other, fighting to the death over the sash. While she was definitely strong, it wasn't enough to best Heracles, who wore the pelt of the Nemean lion. As a servant, one reason she looks so much like Artoria is that Rin deliberately styled her hair the same way. During this war, the Heracles she used to admire is no more. By comparison, Alcides is cruel, willing to harm teenage Elk, who's just a small child. Even though she lost to Heracles in life, she once again seeks to test her mettle against his current form. Believe it or not, there's still more to learn about Fate's Strange Fake. This isn't a definitive lore video, but rather a primer so that you can keep track of all the characters and their motivations. After all, it's a chaotic mess with 2 Holy Grail Wars overlapping each other. Each participant has their own reason for joining the fight, while the main motive for the wars existing at all remains a mystery, or rather a spoiler. This is actually my attempt at keeping things concise and organized, so I hope you find it accessible, especially if you didn't before now. My channel is full of Fate series lore, so if you like what you see, go ahead and scope out my other content. It's all organized into relevant playlists. Thanks for watching, and as I always say, celebrate your fandom! I want to give a special shout out to all my $10 and up supporters: Video Gamer 75, Dante Pendragon, Stephen Elak, Mystic Samurai 1983, Otaku Mom, Free Brick, Alexis Yukio Gomez Yamato, Lunarworks, Link Pendrago, Observer Bellis, James Hewitt, Uncanny EXP, Crow Calum, Saul Soto, Matal Mataru, Winter's Edge, Sneer Cachette, Foxbox, Alzinga Fagan, Caitlin P, Sith Lord 906, Vladimirovna, The Taz 96, Kengo X 77, and Alistair Bernadotte. Thank you all so much.